Reporting and supporting what matters, this is CT Examiner Weekly.
School buses are big business, worth tens of billions of dollars, taking as many as 25 million students safely to and from school every day. One company, Zum, is hoping to break into that market with an electrified model they say is cleaner, safer, and cheaper than the old diesel alternative. In Connecticut, Zum is partnering with Branford Public Schools to roll out the first all-electric fleet in the Northeast, a significant step toward meeting the state's commitment to go all-electric by 2040. So how does a fast-growing venture capital finance company bring a disruptive business model to Branford without disrupting bus service? That's the topic for our roundtable today.
And I'm your host, Brian Scott-Smith, and along with Stroud, Editor-in-Chief, we're joined by reporter Ally LeMaster and two special guests. Welcome to you all. Now, today we're joined by Vivek Garg, co-founder of Zum, a school transport services supplier that uses modern electric buses and other technologies to provide an integrated school bus service. And joining us as well is Dr. Chris Tranberg, the superintendent of Branford Public Schools, who have become the first school district in Connecticut to switch to an all-electric bus fleet. Welcome to you both. Chris, I want to start with you. Talk to us about how your school district came to the decision to go all-electric and why.
Great, thank you. We really appreciate the invitation. We're glad to be here and glad to talk about this exciting project. For us, Branford was well positioned to be the first district in the state to do this for several reasons. First, our Board of Education has a net zero commitment that they voted on in 2023, which really positioned us to invest in this type of opportunity. And Branford also has an ad hoc clean energy committee, and that clean energy committee really has advocated in the community for opportunities for us to approach net zero. On the political side of things, what was happening is in our state legislation, there was an opportunity for districts when they went out to bid on a contract. If there was an allocation for at least one electric bus in your fleet, you could sign a 10-year contract instead of a 5-year contract. And for school districts, it's helpful when you can have that level of long-term predictability for what your budget is going to look like. So that was a part of the RFP that went out, and Zum came in as not only the lowest bidder on the contract, but they also had an opportunity for us to fully electrify over the course of the first 5 years of our contract. And we actually were 2 years ahead of schedule with that for several reasons. But Zum came out not only as the company that was there for electrification, because that wasn't our priority, but they were the most competitively priced. They were also just an incredibly professional company with a team that we were excited to work with in Branford.
Vivek, quick question. How are you making money out of this? This isn't a cheap venture.
Yeah. So Brian, a great question. I'll just add one thing to what Dr. Tranberg was saying. Actually, it takes exceptional leadership on the school district side to challenge the status quo. And while we are an innovator and rightly so, an exceptional company which is very passionate about what we are doing, it was such a great match to find a leadership team who was ready to challenge the status quo and ask for modernization of the student transportation, which is such a need. Just think from that perspective, parents today, families today, they are so used to technology. They can track their pizza. They know more about their Amazon boxes than they know about when their kids are on the road. Like if you go to a typical school district, and if you ask them how their transportation is going in the morning, they just have no clue, because all they rely on is how much their radio set is, buzzing, how many phones are ringing, on that morning.
I want to get back to that, because this is not a cheap venture. You've got various projects out there. We're talking about buses, we're talking about infrastructure. How are you making money on this?
Yeah, so school transportation is actually one of the only commercial, fleet which is rightly positioned to be electrified or to be modernized that way. The reason is because it doesn't require very high, rate charging infrastructure. So the charging infrastructure is much, much cheaper than what you do in trucking or in the city buses. So like we are using 30 kilowatt and 60 kilowatt, like charging infrastructure. And the buses, because like what Dr. Tranberg was saying, because the moment a district is able to sign a longer term contract, so you are able to finance the buses over a longer period, which actually allows us to give district back these buses on a monthly basis. Like if you see, like what does district care about? They care about what am I paying on a monthly basis for the service. And you'll be surprised, like if you compare Branford to other neighboring school districts, they are actually even cheaper than what those districts are paying for their diesel buses, or the internal combustion engine buses. The electric buses are going to be cheaper in service than that also.
Greg's got a question, Greg.
Well, actually, it brings up two questions. One is for Chris, and this is, so comparing this year's budget line, this coming year's budget line for transportation for the district, how does it compare to the budget line for 2 years ago, say, roughly? Or so, to give us a sense about cost. And the other one for Vivek is growth. I mean, my understanding is that part of the way that this works is you guys have a pretty aggressive sense of growing across the U.S., certainly growing across the Northeast and maybe Connecticut. And can you tell us more about like your projections for what you want to do in terms of growth?
Christopher, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll start, and this certainly connects to some of what Vivek was saying. But specifically, we are in our budget proposal that is out right now. We're looking at about a 15% increase in transportation expenses. And as Vivek also mentioned, that is not out of the ballpark of what many school districts that are out for bid are experiencing as they're coming back, because transportation is just a lot more expensive than it used to be. So we're certainly paying more, but we're still not paying the most, is part of how we're looking at it. Obviously, and I'm not sure if we're going to get to this later, but at the end, when we're a little bit too ahead of the curve at the moment, because we're ahead of legislation on the potential for things like vehicle to grid that could provide some financial relief, but we're hopeful that within the year that is going to be possible. So ultimately, we are looking at that. So we have a couple of years of higher than normal increases, but then it stabilizes, it levels out. And then for those out years for us, we'll have 6 years of very predictable low increases, while we have some high increases the first few. In part, that is to help from our operating expenses, because Zum is completely outsourcing all of our services. We have to help pay for the buses that they're paying. So that's the immediate expense of why we have these high increases. And then the actual operational transportation costs level out and become predictable for the years after that.
And Vivek?
Question which was posed to me was about the growth. We are currently serving around 4,000 schools in 15 different states across US. We serve all types of school district, like you will see a district of size of Branford here, but we are also serving for example, Los Angeles Unified, which is the second largest school district in US, or Boston Public Schools. So there's a variety of school districts across US that we serve. The growth in our case is actually being driven by the pent-up demand in the industry, because school transportation, as you were saying, is the largest mass transit system in US, but it has remained so antiquated. Just like when we go around in the state of Connecticut, we see such a pent-up demand because districts were beholden to the same old way of transporting students, the same analog and antiquated way, and they do want to change. And that desire is actually is what is driving the growth here. We every year choose very few districts that we work with, and our goal is very simple. We want to make them widely successful. And it's a very referenceable business, industry, where districts talk to each other. And if you have happy customers and happy families, then automatically it drives growth, I would say.
Our reporter, Ally, has got a question.
So, Chris, I know you talked a little bit about this earlier, but can you talk a little bit more about how the school district was able to finance getting an all-electric fleet?
So I think there's an opportunity when you're the first school district working with a company that is coming into a region for the first time. So I think we benefited by very competitive pricing because of that. There was also anticipation on the part of Zum, because we were we were in a very different place politically at the national level with the move toward electrification and all of the incentives that were existing for federal support. So we're fortunate enough of being as aggressive as we were because we did get some large grants quickly. So we had over $10 million in grants in just about the first year of the project. But that was not as much as we were anticipating. So good news is we got some hefty grants. The bad news is those grants have very much dried up. The other piece that's a benefit, like I mentioned, Branford has just invested in clean energy, and we have an incredibly talented and creative director of finance who's unfortunately retiring in a couple of weeks, who has had creative ways of thinking about how can we invest in this, because in the long term, it is not only going to be of savings, but it's also just better for the environment and the community. So it did come to some creative financing on the part of the town and willingness to make the investment. And there also had to be collective care in the community. And it's interesting because this is a decision that was made almost 3 years ago now, but because now it's coming to light, it's gaining a new audience and talking about all of the things that we actually talked about 3 years ago. So we created a transportation part of our website. So for anyone that's listening that's just curious, we've been very transparent about the contract. We had FAQ from the board members we received that really goes into some of the depth of how closely they looked at this versus other options that were out there at the time. But the interesting part, and Vivek said this earlier, is not only are we getting an electrified fleet, it was the lowest bid that we had that met our RFP for sure.
Can you talk a little bit more about these grants? Were they state or federal?
The biggest grant that we had was from the EPA, and that was over $6 million. So that was kind of the big boost that we had. That also became, I call it the accelerator for us as to why we needed to electrify, because that was an expectation of that grant. And so once that $6 million was received, we knew we needed to do this, and we had a new timeline in order to accomplish it. We also received a grant from DEEP, and not a grant, but a loan from the Connecticut Green Bank on Zum's part. And Connecticut Green Bank has been a very important partner. So if anyone's listening about well, how do you actually do this? We wouldn't have been able to do it without the partnership and support of the Connecticut Green Bank as well. So that's kind of the trifecta for us.
I'm just going to make a point before we move on, and Greg's got a question, and before I bring him in. Of course, the EPA is to reform this electric bus program by providing more fuel alternatives. We should just make that clear. So obviously that is, as you were saying, that is now what has changed from when you were able to get these grants, obviously, a couple of years ago. Greg?
Certainly. I mean, when I look at this rollout and this program, it's very much it's consonant. It's what a lot of certainly legislators in Connecticut say they want to do. They want to move to an electrified economy. They want to have an electrified transportation system. But the other piece of this is one that, as I understand, Zum the service is data driven. This is to make this work, to make this efficient. It tracks the buses, it tracks the students, it collects an enormous amount of data, and I assume it learns from that data. And so that's a piece, though, that we're hearing from the lawmakers that they're more and more concerned about, particularly when it deals with young people. And I was wondering if Vivek or Chris, if you could talk about some of the, and assure our listeners maybe that data will be used in a way that they're comfortable with.
Vivek.
Yeah, sure. I can start, and then Dr. Tranberg can chime in on this one. But the data in this case, when it comes to student data, which is also PII data, it's all encrypted and it is not exposed, to the outside world, to say for that matter. But having said that, one just needs to compare, how this data was being used or is being used in the district across the state or across the US when, they're in the legacy system. Basically, you will see a route sheet is printed every single day, which has all the student data and their addresses and everything printed on it. And drivers use that route sheet. This is a 6-7 page route sheet with even driving directions on it, which they use to drive around. And there's no accountability for that data. Once you lose a sheet, you go to Starbucks, you left the sheet there, a new sheet is printed, and then someone will start driving again. What the system that we have built actually does is that it only gives role-based access to people for the time that they need the data to provide the ride. And after that, they don't have access to that data anymore. And there's no privacy data that is being exposed at any given time to a person who is not allowed to use that data, and district has full control on that who has access to the data. It is also a single sign-on. So similarly, like you will sign into a district system, like as a family or as a staff, that you will sign in using an email, the same single sign-on is used for signing into Zoom system. And you will get access to like what you're allowed to perform the tasks that you need to do the thing. So it is actually taking safety to a very next level, to versus like what is currently being done in the industry otherwise.
Chris, your response to that as well, because as Greg said, there are concerns here in Connecticut about data, and certainly with young people, and that is your business. So what assurances can you give to people listening about making sure that data doesn't get into the wrong hands?
So I would say that the data not getting into the wrong hands is like the ground level expectation for us. And I think what Vivek is talking about is the ceiling. So there's lots of opportunities that come with the technology, but the assurance that we can provide is Zoom meets the Connecticut data privacy regulations that we have to follow. And so that's obviously, it's a non-negotiable for districts, because anyone that we're working with related to technology has to meet those things. But the data that they do have is everything that Vivek said. So, and that was vetted very well by the board. And like I mentioned, that FAQ, that's something that they asked many questions about in order to ensure data privacy at the onset.
And what are you using the data for? Because Vivek said that obviously the school district has access to it. I mean, is it just to make things smarter, or, what are you hoping to learn from this data?
Well, there's a lot of efficiencies that come from the data. And so right now we're working with a separate third party, because we always want to make sure that we're being as efficient as we possibly can be. So we're working with Tranberg, who helped us with our RFP originally, and now they're also looking at route efficiency to make sure that we're doing the best we can to optimize those opportunities. But the data that Zoom can actually provide in partnership is really helpful in doing that. And I think on the parent side, the ease of use of the app with Zoom is helpful, because they can track their child's bus at all times. They can indicate whether or not their child is coming to school that day, so the bus driver knows if they should expect. Students do tag in and out of the bus, so they can follow and they know if their child is on the bus in the first place. From the administrative side, at the district level, I have like an air traffic control panel, and I can see where every single bus is in the district, and I can see if the bus is on time, if it is a little bit behind or more than 10 minutes behind, just by how it's indicated on that. And the principals have the same version of that, but just related to the buses that are leaving their school. So it's not uncommon that a child at the end of the school day goes somewhere where their parent didn't know they were going, or maybe forgot they were going. And it especially happens during transition times, like from elementary to middle school. And so now parents can see, well, is my child on the bus? Did they not take the bus? And it makes things much faster for us, because we can track students very, very quickly.
We'll just add one data point to that. Like, for example, now we actually allow parents, families to give a rating to every single bus ride that their child will take. Just imagine the power of that feedback. Like, we have over 1.5 million ratings across US where parents have rated, their bus rides on Zoom app. And the average rating is 4.9 star out of 5. Why it is so is because the moment someone rates it less than 3 star, we are able to follow up with that family, and not just correct it for that family, but the entire system. So that quick iteration of operations is so much possible when you have technology and data. Is what is happening in the background here.
Thank you for that, Greg.
So Chris, Zoom must be the highest tech thing, the sort of most innovative, the most sort of future pointed forward thing that Branford schools are doing right now. Maybe did it give you kind of sort of butterflies to sign a 10-year contract? Is there there's no real way to unroll this or unwind this if to join up with this sort of fast-moving, fast-growing, exciting company, but it's new. So how did you guys balance that, or how did you guys get the assurance or the good feeling to move ahead with this?
Well, that's a good question because I was a pretty new superintendent when we signed this contract. So I started in July of 2023, and we executed the contract. The board officially voted, I think it was December of 2023. So I was very early on into my tenure, and there were three things that were, I would say, of consideration or a big part of the process. Was number one, is it financially feasible? And it absolutely seemed to be financially feasible. Number two, is there community and board support to do this? And yes, between our own Clean Energy Commission and our net zero commitment from the board, we had that piece as well. And then the third part is like, okay, so is this going to work? And this is where you kind of have to go with your judgment. And Zum is, yes, they're a startup, but they had established themselves well in all of the communities that they were functioning in. And we were also the first in the region, which means that the company wants to grow and move into this area. So we felt like we would be very much an investment that they're making that they also really need to succeed. So there was a symbiotic relationship from like the superintendent lens and from the willingness to take the risk. And if it wasn't working, I mean, it's built into our contract that, hey, this is not working. We need to separate ways and go another direction. So all of those protections were there. So that was my thinking at the time, and it still holds.
Ally's got a question.
So I think this is directed at both of you, but I just had questions about logistics of maintenance. I used to ride the bus as a kid, and I remember it breaking down. What is, Zum's, plans for maintenance and for stuff like this happening?
I just want to say one thing, that this is not actually a guinea pig, like experiment, what we are doing in Branford. Like today, I'm sitting in Oakland Yard, like in California, from where I'm doing this podcast. And this district was the first school district in the entire US to go 100% electric. We took it 2 years back. So for the last 2 years, we have been running an all-electric operation, flawless operation here in Oakland, and it has been highly successful. So there's a lot of knowledge base which is being brought, and that is also one of the reasons why we are able to move with the speed. And like for example, when it came to selection of buses for Branford, we had actually involved Dr. Tranberg and us had involved the entire community to actually test the buses, different type of buses, and ascertain what type of buses would the community like. So a lot of work has gone in the background. When it comes to maintenance and all, it's a longer subject, because how you negotiate warranties on electric buses, and like to understanding which parts actually need maintenance at what speed or what cadence, like all of that knowledge comes into play. But just to give you an idea, if a internal combustion engine bus has got around 2,000 moving parts of that needs to be maintained, and an electric bus has like less than 20 parts which really need to be maintained. So actually maintenance of electric buses is way more cheaper and effective than the internal combustion engine buses. We train our mechanics, so we have got a whole program around how we train our mechanics to maintain these buses. And when we negotiate buses with the manufacturers, we take care of maintenance and warranties, and the coverage for warranty work that we do. We also do that.
So just to clarify, if you could just walk us through. There'll be roughly, I think it's somewhere around 46 buses in Branford when the rollout is complete. So one of those 46, or let's say it's a bad day, 2 of those 46 buses somehow are out of commission. Maybe one gets into a traffic accident, one doesn't work. So what do you guys do? Do you have extra buses on hand? Can you bring one in from the region? Are there mechanics there? Or how do you do that?
Yes. So first of all, there's always a 10% spare fleet, which is carried. Doesn't matter whether it is internal combustion or, EV buses. Issues happen, in operations when you run and when there are physical, assets on the road. Now, the point is, how do you, first of all, catch these issues from happening before they really happen? Like are you able to do that, or are you only reacting when the bus breaks down, and then how fast you can repair and get that bus back on the road? Basically readiness of the fleet is what we are talking about. So technology plays a huge role into this. First of all, like for example, all our buses, we get so much of data from our buses that we are doing predictive maintenance. So we are actually ascertaining every day when these buses are on the road that what might go wrong with this bus by capturing that data. And we are able to maintain those buses with a whole lot of more accuracy than what the legacy players are able to do. But when that bus actually, like something happens, we have a whole ticketing system in a way that our system is designed in a way that from the moment the bus breaks down to the bus is repaired, we are able to track every action on that bus and ascertain how much time it is taking, why it is taking, like, is this bus really fit to be back on the road? So all that work is, also done in the background. So technology actually plays a huge role in this, which helps our staff to keep these buses, ready to be on the road.
Vivek, let me ask you a question about the electricity. Obviously, they get charged and then they go back and then, they're doing like multiple trips during the day. I believe there's some sort of system called a V2G technology, which means, and you mentioned this at the very top of the interview about putting electricity back into the grid. Who's paying for the electricity? And Connecticut is not cheap for electricity. I don't know, Chris, if you want to start on that and then we'll move to Vivek, because like I said, that is one of the big issues here in Connecticut is the price of electricity, which I'm guessing you're paying heavily for this fleet.
We are a little bit ahead of the curve. And so we're ahead of legislation. And at the same time, understandably, school districts specifically, because anyone that is part of the environmental justice group of communities, they have a charge to electrify their fleet by a certain time, and they're feeling that they're not ready. And so we understand that, and I certainly understand that they're trying to slow the roll on the legislation. At the same time, for communities like Branford that are well-positioned and they're not only going to meet the deadline, they're going to be ahead. I think it's important, and we've been working with our partners at DEEP. We've been working with our local legislators because we do know that there was money set aside for things just like this, where there was an expectation that the federal government would be offsetting some expenditures. How can local communities still be supported in meeting what some of those larger initiatives are? So I just wanted to put that out there. But to answer the question directly, we pay the electric cost that's directly related to the use of the buses. But the V2G, when that comes into place, and this would be something that we would go back and work with Zum for negotiations once we understand the actual technical parts of that, would be potentially a great offset to the expense, making why people often say electric vehicles are so affordable is that opportunity that is right there. There's, in addition to the cost, V2G is also contributes to grid resilience. So there's a bigger picture there. And also that the town is very interested in, well, what does it mean for the community in case of an emergency? So can buses be used to power a building? Can our high schools, the shelter, for example, can we use the electric buses to power the building? So all of those things are what we are working to do with Zum to make sure that is part of what this looks like and what this partnership looks like. So there's so much more than just the electric buses themselves, but what they can actually do for grid resilience and partnership in the larger community, not just the schools.
I mean, this is something that we've been seeing. That Connecticut has had difficulty upgrading its grid. And one thing that I noticed was energy storage, which the state has specifically struggled with. This project, the idea is that we'll have 46 buses providing energy storage, a significant amount. And as more and more of Connecticut electrifies, these are sort of energy storage hubs around the state that could provide a significant solution, both in terms of profit, but in terms of stability for the grid. And so I certainly look forward to talking to you guys more when that happens.
What the district should focus on, rightly what Branford had done, was modernization of school transportation and not just think narrowly about, electrification. Just replacing a diesel bus or ICE bus with an electric bus is not going to, really bring the transformation. It is about thinking about modernization as a whole, modernize every aspect of school transportation experience, whether that is for a student, for a family, for a driver, or for a school staff. it has to be thought as a whole. And then electric buses actually, start making sense as part of that modernization piece, because you optimize everything, and you make that experience work seamlessly together.
It's just the tip of the iceberg, but we appreciate both you coming on. My thanks to Greg, Ally, Vivek, and Chris. Don't forget, you can check out the digital pages of ctexaminer.com for more stories and our events calendar for all the latest local happenings. And while you're there, why not subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on all the week's news? It's just $20 for the year. This is CT Examiner Weekly, reporting and supporting what matters. I'm Brian Scott Smith. Thanks for listening.